Okay, so I'm going to take back the screen for a second here, and then I think Bob is going to share. So let me just introduce him. So Bob Chappell is the VP of Instructional Technology for Classlink, and he's going to take some time now on this topic of solving your top 3 digital learning challenges: access, engagement, and rostering, which, Bob, I believe is also an equity issue, right? So I would put another one on the end of that. So over to you. I'm going to go off camera and muting myself. So yeah, and I can see you.
In my beautiful,
your beautiful
great
background.
room.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
not
it's
my
awesome.
real house. Just everybody be aware.
Yeah, just
I
like
wish it was. How are you doing? Well, I thought Carrie did a great job. I
Yeah.
loved the conversational nature. I loved the flow of it. So it was a good start. I have to say, I haven't been in one of the learning councils for a while. We kind of rotate and different people attend from Classlink, and I've missed them. The conversation's always good. The information sharing is always good. First of all, I'm going to shut off my camera because I my own ADD, I get a little distracted looking at myself when I'm kind of talking and presenting. So for my own benefit, plus, just want you to kind of focus in on what is being shared and that sort of stuff. So let me switch over and show my screen. Let me know if you can see that, Luani.
Yep, I can see it.
Great.
You might want to go to present mode, but you probably are going to share other live links, right?
I'm going to share some different stuff. So yeah,
Okay,
I like to bounce around and keep it conversational. So,
Okay,
I may bounce around a little bit. So great. Thank you. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that fatigue is something that you probably all have experienced. We're all coming up on about a year since the pandemic hit, and fatigue about talking about the pandemic, about knee-jerk reactions initially, and trying to find the magic pill for remote digital learning, hybrid learning, going back to school, going back out of school, having blended environments, lots of new terminology. So I just want to acknowledge that we understand the fatigue that you all have, and we admire the tenacity of educators and leaders in district. And better days are coming. I'm going to be hopeful. So you should be hopeful too. Also, I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about digital learning and access, equity, measuring, digital resource allocation, and kind of just talk about some of that in general. I will spend a lot of time talking about just kind of data analytics, what we've seen with digital learning, some of the things that we've added to help districts, our clients that needed certain reports or data points, or our kids attending, how much time are they learning. We're not going to address the social emotional issues. I can tell you that in pandemic, I gained 14 pounds. So I am a very social person. So I get the social emotional of being in the same place and not engaging with people. And I would love to take the topic or class around student autonomy and social emotional, because I think that as educators and adults, we also went through kind of some social emotional issues with being at home all the time and changing how we work and interact. So I'm not going to address all of those things that, we're dealing with: connections, social, emotional, safety, building community trust. There are certain things that I think we as a company can help with, and I'm going to kind of focus in on those. But I just want to acknowledge, I know there's lots of other challenges within district. So just to present, these are some of the clients and quotes from people in the Northeast. So I just wanted to share some of these, and what has been common is that our clients, or those that have come on board, have fared from their own acknowledgement better in kind of a blended hybrid or remote learning scenario. And the reason for that is a multitude of things, and it has changed over a period of time. So those that were using Classlink, which is a single sign-on portal and a rostering tool, so we do account generation, and then there's data analytics behind usage and stuff. The reason that most of them have said that is that they needed one place to go, no matter what device, where students were, how they were learning. The common thing that they needed was one place for students and parents and staff to log into, where all their digital resources could be made available to them. And that environment looks similar to what you're seeing on your screen, where it's it's like your smartphone, right? It's a technology that we're familiar with, where things that are relative to you, your applications and learning resources and tools and library resources and learning management systems and everything else is in one place. And you click on it and you get into that learning resource. Some of the other things is that account provisioning, which is really rostering of digital resources, was always important pre-pandemic, because students and staff weren't getting resources until 4, 5, 6 weeks into the school year. That's lost instructional time. In pre-pandemic, we were losing about a week of instruction or more each year with not knowing how to log in, trying to get the kids to log in the lab or on their individual devices in school, and not having the ability to log in and what their password was, and then not having access to resources because somebody in the tech department who was working, overtime, trying to get all the accounts provisioned and push data over so that when they want their Houghton Mifflin or their iReady resource or Nearpod, they could have that. Some of the other challenges within this criteria, or within this dynamic of kind of what changed, was, access to devices. We can't help with that per se, Classlink, but because it's web-based, districts were getting additional devices, Wi-Fi hotspots. Students were using their own devices, their own resources and tools. And when districts said to us, I'm just giving you some examples of kind of the whys, when districts said, oh my gosh, we had to buy 800 additional Chromebooks after the pandemic hit, we had to distribute those. Boy, was it easier for us, because what we did was made the login to our one-click portal the place to go on all of those devices. And some of the other things that we heard from districts was, if the device breaks, no worries. They can access it on their phone, their iPad, grandma's computer if they had to go stay with grandma or grandpa for a period of time. And then what we saw as this kind of moved through the pandemic was districts, staff leaders were saying, gosh, we've rolled out all these tools, we bought additional resources. I have no clarity on students and teachers and if they're learning or logging in or how much time. I have no clarity if that tool is being used and whether it's being accessed, and whether we bought something that we thought would be the panacea for digital learning, which most districts did. And now we have to make decisions on budgets and things around those natures. Before I kind of get into the analytics piece, which I'll get into, I just want to show this video. So let me know if you can hear this, Leilani, and if it's working. Good.
Bob, we got no sound.
No sound?
Right.
Okay, hold on one sec. All right. So what I will do is I'm going to put that in the chat box for you guys. It's a very short minute, 2-minute video. It's from Meriden Public Schools. You're going to hear from Mark, the superintendent, on a panel, I believe, tomorrow. And it just goes through and talks about how Classlink was central to what they want to do. So I will get into that. I'll send that video. I'll pop it in the chat box for everybody. I'll do that now. And what I really want to focus in on is just kind of high level going through and sharing with you the pieces and components of what Classlink has to offer. So we're in about 2,000 districts in the United States. We work K-12 to higher ed internationally, primarily in the United States. And teaching and learning is all the stuff on the left-hand side that I'm going to focus in on, and a lot around the kind of the data trends. These pieces over here is probably what most people in the room may not actually participate in, is the account creation. So if you think about it, when somebody starts in the district, they need a Google or an Active Directory email password. They need to be put in security groups. This tool automates that process. The rostering actually creates the accounts in the iReady, the Dreambox, the Nearpod, the Houghton Mifflin, the Pearson, the Ames Web, all of the curricular tools, Safari Montage, a lot of the people that are digital partners today creates those accounts. The single sign-on piece is one login, one portal. Classlink will create a portal for anything that you're using. So it's personalized not only to the district, but it's personalized to the user. And logging in, which I'm just going to visually walk you through and show you, is as easy as flashing a QR badge, which is a QR code, and very popular in the K-1-2 environment. Most districts set it so that it logs them in, the students, into that Chromebook or the iPad or the Windows device, Surface Book, whatever it may be, and into their portal. But they can log in with their Active Directory, Google, or existing credentials. And when they log in, this is what they'll see. So I'm going to log in using my Google credentials as an example. And this is a personalized portal with the resources and tools, but it also has district and school branding on it as well. So when I log into this portal, I'm going to actually be on a student teacher side. And what I'm going to see here, and big picture, is first I'm going to see a notification. So you can push down messagings to your users, all third graders, all teachers. Hey, we have a new resource. You should look for the icon Dreambox and click here to sign up for a class. But what happens in a single sign-on environment if you're not completely comfortable or aware of what it looks like? They will be able to click on any of these resources and get into those without having to put in the password. So the first screen on the PowerPoint was basically, how many passwords? I need this, I need magic fairy dust, I need to add a feather from the horn of it needs a capital letter, and, kind of a little joking around password management and control. Well, think about this, whether you're in school pre-pandemic on any device, at home, at grandma's, at your dad's for the weekend, on holiday, whatever, pre-pandemic, one portal place to go for everything that's personalized to you. And you can click on the resource and get into it. The barriers to those teaching and learning tools and those connectivity, whether it be your LMS system or any of the assessment tools or other things, is this portal. And when the pandemic hit, those that had Classlink, they had one place to go. So kids were at home and teachers and staff were struggling with the instructional pieces and how to engage in this new environment, but they were not struggling with, where do we go to get those resources? How do I provide that link? Do they know their password to get into that resource? And it's everything from library resources to anything that's web-based, instructional, your Google suite. And districts that have been with us understand that they begin to push out staff links, so that if you're a staff or a principal or somebody that logs in and you need to look at assessment tools and HR stuff, you have curricular tools that are personalized to your productivity as an administrator, as a teacher, as well as all those instructional tools. And the other thing that happened was they actually could get access to their H drive. So if you're in a district where you have a network drive and you went into the pandemic, you couldn't access in most of those districts your S or your D or your H drive. Well, with Classlink, our districts could actually open the documents up, make amendments, make changes, and they could actually find things across different environments. So if I wanted to find something out about, the NYSCATE event, and I didn't remember where that document or folder was, I could search everywhere that's connected on the left. And I could connect my OneDrive, my Office, my Box. This kind of reflected what the district had as web-based tools for cloud storage in their network drives. Now, briefly, I'm going to show you one thing that we developed. It's called Teacher Counsel My Backpack. This was in development when the pandemic hit, but there's some things we added that were requested right away by districts. Because in a pandemic environment, teachers were struggling and had a lot of anxiety of, I don't know if they're learning. I don't know if they're logging into my class. I don't know how much time they're using, which is, fair, right? We shifted to this remote learning environment, and when they came and sat in your class, you'd see them and they were in your class and they were engaged, and you did your check-ins and they were physically there for you. So what happens is the student sees the classes or class that they're in, and the teacher manages the classes. So if I'm teaching math modules or biology, then what I can do is post announcements. So think of this as learning management light, do some simple engagement. All of the core apps that are used for this class are already here. And if I needed to distribute something to the students that we were going to use in class this week, I could actually add something. So just like you'd hand out documents or papers or graphing calculators or things that you'd use in class, some of your technology tools, you could distribute basically that app. Here's where people began to adopt this. And this app right here, which we created at Classlink, became one of the top 10 apps being used in our districts. This is why. Excuse me. If I go to the previous week, it's going to tell me whether my student logged in. So all your students will be listed here. And if they logged in, you would see that they're logged into their class, and you would see how much time they're using and what they used. So if the district was saying, hey, we're shooting for these benchmarks of time and resources and how long you're in your class, here's where a teacher could see and make those judgments. Now, one of the learning trends we saw is middle school and high school, to no surprise, we're learning later in the afternoon. So we heard from our districts that teachers in the elementary might be checking their class. If the students hadn't logged in by 8, they'd reach out to the family and say, hey, the child hasn't logged in, or 8:30 or 9, whatever parameters they set. However, middle school and high school teachers began to see that students were learning on their own time in many cases, afternoon, evening, because they sleep later. It's just the nature of that age. And so they would check in maybe 12 or 1 if the students hadn't logged into the class. Like, don't forget, I need you to do your work within your biology environment, and you need to spend X amount of time in the digital resources and posting announcements. Are there any questions? Okay.
I don't see any coming in, Bob, but I'll let you know if they do.
Okay, great. So let's switch over for a second. Let's talk a little bit about, because we're exploring very high level things today. So let's talk about the analytics, because the precedent or the need for analytics has become extremely much more enhanced, much more important. And some of the essential questions when the pandemic hit are or were: who was showing up to learn? What digital resources are students and staff engaging with? And what decisions need to be made about digital resources? And without having the ability to capture data, districts really, unless they went into those individual tools, they could get some of this data, but they were flying kind of blind. So, learning from Classlink's data, just to talk high level, this is what happened across our clients. So when the pandemic hit, here was logins and unique student staff usage. We saw that during the pandemic, when it first hit, dropped dramatically. And then about the April 20th, about almost 4 weeks in, 3 or 4 weeks in, it was returned back to about 90% for our clients, the pre-pandemic COVID level. And, I believe that happened in essence because they had one portal to go to. There was lots of struggles. Everybody was hit by the pandemic when it first hit the districts and schools. But once we kind of, took that hit and faltered a little, stepped back a little bit, having one place to log in became extremely much easier for districts to manage accessibility. And then the question turned to kind of equity. Do they have internet access? Are there devices they can use? If not their own, how do we get that student a device? So there were questions, obviously, lots of other things to consider. The other thing is the number of students that were logging in on weekends, and the students in middle high school grades were logging in much later in the day and the evening. So learning shifted, and some of our districts use that data to schedule and ask teachers to work different hours to have more flexibility in their scheduling, or to put staff on board that could help students that were, and parents too, but learning digitally from home at peak hours where maybe they had technical questions. So that became very important. I would say from a district standpoint, impersonating a user and being able to log in and say, no, you have that resource, that account is there for you, and being able to go in with permissions to impersonate a child's account became extremely important when you're managing remote learning with those students. So what did we kind of learn from this data? We need to minimize the barriers for accessing resources, not just having one place to go, but when we buy or distribute new resources, it's easier for us to digitally manage those in an environment that the teachers and students and parents are already comfortable with. The second thing was supporting anytime, anywhere learning, which, these are common sense things if you just take a step back when the pandemic hit. But understanding that anytime, anywhere learning means on any device, anytime, in a portal, on the web, day and night, anytime that you wanted to have access to that. Not just when you could log in, when your teacher was there, or when you went down for lab space, or when those digital materials were distributed and you had access to that. We have to think beyond just the devices and the internet access. And what is meant by that is that the hardest struggle, if we remove the devices and internet access, which have to be there in some way, shape, or form, either BYOD, BYOB, or personal devices or school issue devices and internet access. The one portal access is important, but we have to think beyond what, if we remove the barriers to the accessing those tools and resources, how are we effectively using those tools and resources? And allowing teachers to use those tools and resources in a creative way where they may not have been comfortable using them before became easier when we remove the where do you have to go? How do you log in? How do I switch between environments? Those sort of things. And lastly, digital access and usage data became much more important. So here's kind of analytics today, and I could go in and show lots of the analytics, but we built in heat maps. So the top request of districts in beginning of April was, I need to know if users are logging in. I need, we got to set some thresholds as a district that if I have 10, 11, 12 buildings, or even 4 or 5 or 20 or 90, I need, as an assistant superintendent or instructional tech leader or somebody within the district, I need to know that on a rolling average, I have at least 85% of my students and staff are logging in each day. That's the benchmark. So we added all these heat maps that could be accessed within the portal. The next thing that was required was how much time are they using these apps? Are they being used? We bought something and rolled that out. If it's not being used, then how do we provide and support the teachers and students if they're not using this new LMS? And what buildings are not using it so that we can do some virtual training and support around that. And questions around digital resource cost and allocation. So in Classlink, you can look at how many users, how many unique license, cost per user, and how many unique users you actually have using a resource. Because we're going to have to make decisions on, we don't use that anymore. Or we bought that, that is core, that is a mandate from the superintendent. So we have to support that, and we need to know where that support needs to go to the teachers within the district. And then certain things, obviously, like logins to class, and then being able to export actual usage data. And there's all of these exportable reports that we built in and added to because districts were saying, if we have to report up to the state, or I need to report up and I need a report to be sent to the assistant superintendent, because I don't want them logging in here, or they don't want to log in, but they need to see some data. Those are things that we built in. So, the data and analytics, the number of people logging in to see the analytics within Classlink went up dramatically fivefold when the pandemic hit, because we needed clarity, we needed insight, we needed the data to support, is learning happening? Not so much how effective is, but is it happening, and what's being used, and how are we supporting the use of those resources and tools? So I just wanted to share that, and I will also put in the box I don't know if I can put in the chat question. I wanted to share that video from Meriden. So Doug, I don't see the chat box where I can post, or Lilani. So if you could post that 2-minute video from Meriden, it's really a nice video. Do you have any specific questions? I didn't go into account generation. I will say that as far as security is concerned, Classlink is highly secure. All of the rostering data is kept separate. That is different than others in the industry. But we understand that with, where I live in New York State, there's tight privacy and security laws, and your district's data should be sitting alone when you're creating student accounts. Hopefully this gave you some idea of kind of who we are. Again, K-12, all support training, and all the pieces of Classlink are included. The last thing I want to kind of pre-announce is we have a new piece called Classlink Analytics Plus. And what that will do is it will capture and put the data on any school device for any resources or tools that are being used in places that students are going on school devices into the analytics dashboard. So not only can you collect the data through the one-click portal, but on any school device, you're collecting all data and usage, which for many districts in many states is kind of becoming a mandate. Thank you.
All right. So that was awesome. And Bob, I'm dying here over the cup that you're showing on that picture.
I know.
It is.
It's true though, isn't it?
I know. And then you try to use the same password, and then you realize your security is.
Or they've told you to change it, and then you have to go back in.
Yeah.
It's like the Zoom meeting fatigue of today as well. I mean, I there's days where I'm in 5 different online learning environments, right? So
yeah, that's
everybody hang in there. Spring is coming, and you've done great work keeping it together this year, and things will be good. So be positive.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today.